Hi, and welcome to Mermaid Mode. In this third episode, I'm going to talk to Sue Kay. She's a co-owner of Lacuna, a kite brand that she co-owns with her partner Dave. She's a kite designer behind the brand, and she is also a freelance kite designer for many other brands in the industry. Sue also has an incredible amount of knowledge about the kite industry, about the design of things, and she is a record holder for the highest jump during the War Worlds in women, and she's currently a number 3 highest jump holder worldwide in a women's division overall. It's a very exciting conversation. I was really looking forward to it, and I hope you enjoy it. And let's dive in. Sue, welcome to Mermaid Mode. Thank you for joining this podcast.
Thank you. I was very excited to see when you announced that you were going to do it. It is awesome to have a woman talking about or talking to other women in the industry or in the water sports in general who are passionate about it. I'm looking forward to see everything that you've got coming, and I've listened to both the podcasts you've released so far and thoroughly enjoyed them.
Oh, thank you. That's super nice. But I was really excited that you actually also reached out and told me that you were really excited about the podcast. That was really, really sweet and very generous for me as well. I'm a huge fan.
I think it's more women should just give things a go. I mean, that's everybody like in the kiting for the last like I've been in it for over 2 decades now, and everyone's like, oh, once I get to this level or once I achieve this, then I will do this. And I'm like, actually, why don't you just give it a go now? Because you won't have expectations to be great right now. Just give it a go, take part, then you know what it feels like, and then you can build on your skills to improve and to actually set your final goals, whatever they may be. Rather than going, okay, once I get to this level, I will take part. Or once I get to this level, I'll enter my first competition. Or once I understand this or get my degree, then I'll start designing product. It's just give it a go. Why not do it right now? You've got an idea, go and do it.
I also love the fact that you said that when you just started kiting, you also entered the competition, and you entered the competition when there was like just to bulk up kind of like the number of girls in the competition, which resonates with me as well, because that's why I started as well back in like also, I think you were 2003 or something. I started kiting also in 2003, like around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first competition I joined, there was 3 girls. The first girl could do a small jump, I think, of the wave.
Mm-hmm.
Another girl could actually just go back and forth, and I could barely get on the board. And I took the 3rd place because we were only 3 of us. So what's your experience like? What could you do in your first competition?
Brilliant. I was a little bit more advanced than that, so I was lucky. It was New Zealand, and at the time it was like one of the places. It was actually Christchurch in New Zealand, one of the places where there was products being developed. There was underground kiteboards, there was pedal and kites. There was my husband, the bloke who became my husband, DK Kiteboards, and everybody was building products and riding. They were passionate kiters, and a lot of the international kiters would also come to town because underground kiteboards was there, and then people would learn from each other very quickly. And there were 3 women entered into the competition, and the one was the reigning world champion at the time, Cindy Mosey, who was a New Zealander. She was such a awesome kiter. She was the first woman to do an aerial handle pass in competition, but also one of the kiters in the area was a previous world champion, Steph Gamble, who went on tour in 99, 2000, I think it was. So
Wow.
so there was talented women around, but Steph didn't compete in the competition, I think it was. And there was another girl who'd been kiting a bit longer than me and was an instructor, and she didn't enter because she thought, she wasn't good enough to enter. And I was like, you can't have only 3 women, you need a heat. So I entered, and I went and did my back roll the one way, and I almost got my back roll going the other way, and that was the sum of my tricks at the time. And I came fourth in my first ever competition. You did better than me coming third. Um, but then the next year I won the competition, so it was fine. It was a good learning experience, because if I had expectations to do better, I would have been very nervous about entering the competition. And by going in quite green and knowing that I didn't have the same skills as the other girls, I I got experience without the pressure associated with getting that experience.
I love it. It's exactly the same as Kaya was saying as well. Just join your local competitions, just have fun with other girls really on the water.
And how often do you get all of that space to do whatever you want to? It's like
Mm.
nobody's going to come in front of you when you want to go do your trick, which is something when you're free riding, you've always got to keep eyes out for everybody on the water. But when you're in your heat, there's often a lot more space available to give things a go.
I wanted to just highlight one of your competitive achievements, and that's your Woo Worlds win. Last year, you won the highest jumps in women, and you're also third on Woo overall in women worldwide, which is funny because I've listened to your podcast with Adrian on Kitesurf 365, and 2 years ago, you actually said that you would like to be somewhere at least on the ranking board, and you were hoping that when you turn 50, the senior division would add women so you could actually be on the board somewhere. But instead, you actually just completely blew everything away and actually became the top jumper, or got kind of like, that's what Woo is about. It is about jumping high, right? So, and you're the highest ranking jumper. Yeah.
Yeah. Woo's just such a nice platform to go out and measure it. It's not, I mean, everybody's always on about, oh, I got robbed or whatever it was with their woos, but it's about going out and having fun. And you never know when you're on the water at the right time with the right kicker and the right gust and space to jump. I mean, that's my biggest thing, is I don't jump unless I have a lot of space downwind of me. And that for me, often I get to the beach, especially in Cape Town, because it can get quite crowded, where I'll look at it and I'll go, okay, I'm not going out today, or I'm going to go up the beach quite a bit or down the beach where the kickers or the conditions aren't as good for achieving really big jumps, just because I feel more confident with jumping when there's fewer people around me. And it just happened to be that Woo Worlds in South Africa was at the start of the windy season. We got it really nice and early, and there was not many people in Cape Town at the time, so there was lots of space. And it actually happened to be that it was the day that I did that big jump was a public holiday in South Africa, and it's called Braai Day, which is barbecue day. It's our heritage day in South Africa. So everybody at lunchtime pretty much left to go be sociable and braai. And it happened to be that around lunchtime, the wind gusted to over 30 knots to 33 knots. I happened to be on the water. It was uncrowded. The tide and the kickers were perfect. It wasn't massive swell. It was just waist high to a little bit higher. And it just all worked out nicely that I got a couple of good runs and good jumps, 2 jumps over 25 meters in that session. And it was brilliant. It was just such an amazing feeling to be able to have the space to go and go big. And during the Woo Worlds on top of that. So everything just lined up. The funny thing was I didn't immediately go and upload my session because I don't wear a watch, so I can't actually see how high I've jumped during the session. I have to upload my session afterwards. And I came in from that session because somebody else wanted to demo some kites. So then I was with customers on the beach the whole afternoon, and only right at the end of the day did I go, okay, before we leave the beach, I want to upload this, and I was very, very excited when I got the 20. I actually turned to Dave. I've loaded it on my phone, and there were a couple of people around me, and they said, "So how'd you go?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And I just showed the phone screen to them, and they got super excited with the fact that I'd could jump 25 meters, and everybody in the car park was over the moon about it. I was very, very happy that it was recorded. Very happy. But yeah, the aim was to jump twice, half my height. No, what was it? Half my age in meters. So when I was 48, I wanted to jump 24 meters, and I never achieved that. So that was the conversation with Adrian. But now I'm turning 50 this year, and I've jumped 25 meters. So that's a goal that's been ticked off. So I'm very stoked. And on top of it, the best thing about it was on a kite that I designed it was something, and people often go, well, how do you determine what the kite's got to be able to do? And the big thing with the Alpha V4, which is the kite that I did it on, is the whole time it was like, this is going to be a big jumping kite. I'm going to be able to do my personal best height on it. And if I can do it, then any other person who uses this kite should be able to jump their personal bests. And pretty much everyone that bought kites through the summer here in Cape Town, they all improved their personal bests by 25% or more.
Wow.
And and it just goes to show that if you build a product with a brief in mind to suit a specific group of customers, you can really make a difference to people when they're using that product. And that was the big thing with developing the Alpha V4. It was going to be a big boosting kite for your average kind of person. And I think it's done the trick so far. So yeah, so super excited.
Mm. And if you have a perfectly designed kite, then nothing is scary at all. I guess
Well,
this
I
is
don't
the
think there's such a thing as a perfect design, but it was appropriately designed.
Nice. It was a soft segue into your design career, I guess. I mean, this is something that I'm so interested to talk to you about because I'm also a designer, but I'm a software designer, which you'd think is very different, but actually it's quite interesting because the words you're using and the terminology you're using and the way you're describing your process for the design is very, very much similar how the software design also works, where you have to think about the users, you have to think about accessibility, as you say as well. All of these things, they align so much in any kind of design thinking and design approach. So to start from this, maybe you can just say how you got into the kite design, because I see that you've mentioned that you've started or like you got a early exposure into designing through the kite boards, but how did you even think about it? Like, what was in your mind the first time you were thinking, it's like, I'm going to design a kite board?
So what's literally in the early days, it was the kite board I got was a bigger, longer board. It was 175 centimeters. The stance, the
Wow.
foot straps were the feet were very close together. So trying to get up on the board, even though it was long, it was very skinny. It had a lot of buoyancy, and the foot position it was all wrong, which really hindered me being able to get up on the board in the early days. And then meeting Dave at the beach when I was trying to kite in Christchurch, he said, well, maybe you need to get your feet further apart. That'll probably help you with getting up on the board. So he actually offered to modify my board to set the stance wider. And so I went off to the workshop and I watched this. And then I ended up going off to the workshop more than once with him after that. That board actually was stolen. So then he loaned me a board, and I just hung out in his workshop and I swept the floor, and asked what I could help with. So I started cutting lamination kits. After the lamination kits, I said, well, can I help you with the lamination? So I helped him with the lamination. The board that came out from that lamination was much better consolidated than the boards that he'd done in the previously. So I said, well, if you want, you can keep doing the laminations. And in the meantime, we also developed a relationship, and I kind of ended up getting married to him and buying into the business, and that was it. We started DK Kite Boards. Well, he started DK Kite Boards about a year before we met, and then I just joined in the business, and we did that for 10 years in New Zealand before he ended up going over to Hong Kong as a board designer, board product manager for Lacuna Kites. So I kept running DK kite boards for a little bit before I joined him. But in that time, kites were changing a lot. We went from the sea kites to the bow kites specifically, and I ended up picking up some sponsorship from Ozone when they first came out with their inflatable kites, and then with that, it was looking at the bridles on these kites and how I was able to do so much more with the original Ozone Instinct than what I could do with any of the other kites I'd been using through the years. And part of the reason for that was the bridling system and the way that it had a progressive depower system, like a progressive fifth line. There was like just things in the product which made me think about, okay, this makes a big difference. And for my weight and my size and my reach that I had with my arms and things like that, it worked well for me. And then I ended up, Ozone changed the way that they changed their kite designer, so the product actually changed a bit. And the new kite designer had a different philosophy. And so the product didn't feel the same anymore. And so there was always some tweaks that could be done on the bridles to make it feel a little bit more comfortable for me to ride. So I kind of fell into the whole kite tuning thing, just to suit me, like changing things on it to suit me. And I moved off Ozone and I ended up with Ocean Rodeo for a little bit. Can't remember if there was anyone else in between, but it was, the same thing. To make the kite feel a little bit better for me, I'd put a knot here in the bridle or whatever it may be. We had a kite school as well at the time. And so there was always kite repairs being done. We repaired kites for pretty much everyone in the district as well if something broke, and it was an easy repair to do. We'd do it, or emergency repair. Otherwise we'd send it off to the specialist in the city of Auckland. So we were 2 hours north of Auckland in New Zealand at the time. So it was all of these things associated with the products. So there was the board building side of things. There was the making the kites feel right for me personally, and fixing kites introduced me to the whole concept of product design, as well as how things are built and how to. It's a user interface thing. It's like how that user experience can be improved with a little bit of tuning, and that's also. So that's kind of how I started fiddling with it. And then once I was in Asia, I competed on the Kite Tour Asia, but I injured myself, and then I was at a bit of a loose end, and I ended up, the kite designer for Cabrina needed a tester to help him launch kites, ride around, give feedback, and spending time with Pat. I used to spend maybe 10 days out of every 2 months with him, and watching him work and like designing the product and being very particular about materials, how they get laid on the cutting tables, to make sure that the bias is right, so that there's the tensions in the right directions for the kites, making sure that the bridles are tuned so that it feels correct for the brief, whatever it may be, and then determining that, okay, well, we can feel the difference in a bridle of 5 mils, like really small amount, and then going, okay, well, now we need to work with the factory to make sure that they can produce within this tolerance, which previously the tolerance in a bridle may have been 1.5 centimeters. Now it's got to be less than a centimeter because we can feel that difference in the bridles. So as the kite building process improved, the materials understanding and all of that, then it started going, okay, well, now that's under control. Now we need to control the bridles as well, the bridle building systems. And that, I mean, just working with Pat was a real eye-opener at how much this can affect a user experience. And so I was hooked. I wanted to become a kite designer at that point, which wasn't to happen for quite a while. So yeah, so that's kind of where the journey started. And it took me from there another 5 years before I started working on actual kite design. I was working for Airish in customer services and sales for quite a while, and then that's a proper office job, and I was struggling with it, and eventually I said, no, that's enough. I can't deal with this, and I quit. And but that at the time they needed a junior product person to help in the kite department, and so I said, okay, well, I'll put my hand up for that and start as a junior product person and work with the kite designer Mark Patterson, so Paddo, and I worked with Paddo on the Lift V3, which is a big air kite for Airish, and that was again a fantastic learning opportunity and spending time testing product with all the team riders, tuning bridles, getting the feedback from the team riders, because it was a product that was supposed to be to bring a big air team rider onto the team, and we were successful. We got Jason Van der Spey at the end of the journey. He joined Airish and used the Lift V3 for King of the Air that year. Not probably less than 2 months after he joined Airish, he was using the Lift V3. So yeah, and so that was with Airish, but because they already had a senior kite designer, there wasn't much room for me to expand from there. And at the same time, Lacuna was having issues with their supply chain and a whole lot of things. And Dave and I got chatting with the owner, and in the end, we decided to join Lacuna, and eventually actually ended up taking over Lacuna from the previous owners, and it gave me the opportunity to become the kite designer. So now I am the kite designer for Lacuna. Dave's the board designer and accessories designer, and together we do the rest of the work. We do have a fantastic the guy who looks after our social media, helps us with our marketing, and does a lot of testing for us. He's absolutely brilliant at kite testing as well. He's worked with some kite designers previously, so he's got a lot of experience, been in kite surfing longer than us. So yeah, and we're currently working together on a wave kite, which is his baby, which is the kite. So every product in our range so far has been for a person. So the Omega V4 was Dave's kite. So DK is the all-round kiter amongst us. He just wants something that does everything well, and is easy to use and all of that. So the Omega's a DK's kite, the Alpha's been my kite in a way, and the wave kite is Said's kite. So a lot of the brief comes from what he likes in a wave kite. And then on top of that, it's something that's got to be easy to use. It's got to be durable. It's got to be affordable, because in South Africa we don't earn euros or US dollars. So a lot of people need to be able to spend less than a year's salary on a kite range,
Yeah.
which, yeah, which is quite, there's a lot of people here that don't earn as much as what you can earn overseas. So, yeah.
For sure.
So we want to make it affordable so that we can have lots of kiters to use the amazing wind that we get here in South Africa. So, yeah, so that's basically my journey.
In short. I actually wanted to ask you about that, the kite process, but you already covered a lot of that when I wanted to ask, because one of my biggest questions was kind of like, how do you choose a problem to solve as a designer? How do you decide we're going to design this? Because and not to sound wrong, but in my head, kind of like everything that can be designed in kite has already been designed. So how do you choose what to work on next and what to change in order to appeal to who? And you also mentioned that it's designed for a person in your team right now. Um, so how do you decide that that's the next challenge that you guys want to take?
So the big thing is in our industry, and this is something that happened in the windsurfing industry. Windsurfing was massive in the 80s. It was huge. But as the industry grew, the people that were working on the products were becoming really good at what they were doing, and they were specializing. And so all of the products started becoming more technical, harder to use. They had all the bells and whistles being thrown into them, so they're becoming more expensive. So it was kind of taking the products out of the reach of your everyday user. So the families with the kids who, like, pretty much every holiday home used to have a set of windsurfers in them, and everyone that drove to the beach in the 80s would have a windsurfer on top of on the roof of the car or on the trailer or whatever it may be. And because it became more technical and more expensive, and the materials became more advanced, and they were chasing lighter and whatever else it was, a lot of the fun was removed um, from the sport. And with kite surfing, it really feels like that's happening as well. It's a chase of technology. Yes, we do need to keep improving the technology, but for the performance side of things, not there's a very small percentage of people who actually perform as well as what their equipment is designed to perform. A lot of people are on equipment that is so much more advanced than what their riding level is. And they could do better being on something that is a little bit less performance oriented, and so that they can progress um, in their riding skills rather than having the kite make up for, or the board or whatever else, make up for their inability or the things that they're struggling with, things that they can improve on, um, and then move on to the more performance product if they want to. And so for us, like, it depends on who. So we do work for other, like, I'm my kite design work is mainly for Lacuna, but we do I do tuning work for other brands as well. And at the end of the day, it's the brief. It's who's the product for? Do you want it to be a double looping, um, King of the Air winning big air kite that only Giel Vlucht or Jason van der Spey or Jesse Richmond can use? Or do you want it to be a massive boosting, woo record breaking kite for, or personal record breaking kite for the other 95% of the kiters out there, or the other 99% of the kiters out there? And that's the product brief. At the beginning of it is the important thing, and how you decide that is, you got to figure out who your target market is. And with Lacuna specifically, it was the Alpha V4 was going to be um, it wasn't for the double loops. It was going to be a single loop sure kite, so you can feel confident doing a single loop and you can feel confident jumping huge. You know where the kite is at all times. It's going to let you down softly when you come into land. That's it. Those are the most important criteria, is to make you feel really confident on it. Will I go out at Bajarez and do a double kite loop on it? Never. I mean, even if I built a 6-meter version of it, it would never happen, because the kite design it isn't that. And I can't see any Lacuna customers wanting to do that either. But if I was designing for another brand, that might be a criteria that they want, and then yes, then we can add it into it. And so just like your software design, it is the brief, the target market, the what are the restrictions that you've got. So cost of manufacture, your distribution, like your logistics, what materials can you get? Because in kite surfing, for example,
Yeah.
the majority of the materials, if you want a specific color, you've got to order it. If you're using Tasian fabrics, you've got to order it 18 months pretty much in advance, to make sure that you're going to have enough for production. And make sure that you're going to be able to get it in time to get your product to market. So that's just, all of those things need to be considered when you're designing a product.
Mm. And what's your design process from start to finish, if you can share some of it as well, because you have the brief of who you're designing for and the KPIs that you want to achieve, the aims that you want to achieve. So where do you take it? So you use the software you mentioned, kind of like AutoCAD for kite design, I guess. Um, like how
Yes.
many iterations do you do? Do you do simulations inside of it and then you send it for production and try something that's kind of like raw? Like how does that work?
So actually, where we normally start is the brief, and then going, what products in the market exist at the moment
Mm.
that have the characteristics that we're looking for, and then we will test those products, look at those products, and decide, yes, this is what we like about it. This is what can be improved on it to match our brief better. Um, this is an issue with the materials, so we've got to change the materials here, there, or the next place to um, match our target price at the end of the day. There's all of those things. So that's you first. It's the market research, finding the
Mhm.
products that suit it, and then it's yes, going into the software. So I use Carora CAD, which is there is a free version and there's also trial versions available. So anybody can go out there and actually give it a go, design their own kite. So CaroraCAD.online, you can go in there and fiddle and design a kite. And then the Carora CAD, the full blown version, which I use, I mean, you can also design wings with it, so not just kites. So whatever wind sport you choose. But I'll go in there, I'll draw a product, design up a product with profiles that I think are appropriate for the segment that I'm looking at. So be it a more powerful profile or a faster profile or whatever else it may be. I'll look at the shape of the kite, how open it is, how swept it is. Like there's so many variables you can change. And pretty much put some attachments on the kite to build a bridle, but I tend to like to put attachments on every segment on the kite and an intersegment, because bridle tuning is something that I like to play with anything from a 4-point to an 8-point bridle, depending on the product, but it's just to get the balances right. You can in the software get your center of effort on the kite and then place your bridle associated with that. But the thing with the software draws a product that doesn't consider the materials.
Mm.
So as soon as you make the kite, And this comes with time. You like, depending on how many versions of the kite you've made from the same materials, you can start determining how much it's going to change from from the kite in your software versus the kite that's in front of you. They do vary depending on the elongation of the materials, yeah, and how they've been cut, how they've been assembled. If you decide to put reinforcements in a certain area, it can actually change the shape of the kite because of the way that it, instead of it pulling in only 2 mils, it's now going to pull in 5 mils because it's you're stitching through more material. There's so many factors that affect it in construction. So the thing is, you draw it, you design it, you get the shape that you like, you send it off to be prototyped, to be made in the materials that you choose. It gets sent back to you. You can check the constructions. You can go out and you can test it, and you can tune it to see if you can get it to fly and be the shape that you wanted out of your software. Generally at that point you go, okay, well, we need more profile or less profile here, or camber, or whatever else. We need it to be a little bit more open. We need a little bit more angle of attack in the wingtips, whatever it may be. You look at the way the kite flies and performs. You redraw it. You don't necessarily redraw it. You tweak the designs in your software, and then you send it back for the next prototype. And the number of prototypes, every kite designer, I think, will keep prototyping, because there's always improvements that you think you can make on a product. A product is never perfect. So it's generally, when it's good enough, the product manager or one of the managers will say, it's good enough, put a pin in it. The next version can get all the better upgrades on it. And that often comes down to time frames, like, when does the product have to be released? What's the budget on your prototypes? Have you overrun your budget because you've ordered too many prototypes? Yeah, all of those things. And so that depends on the brand and the available product, their release cycles, all of those things. And the other thing is it the first version of a product, or is it the 15th version of the product? There are products out there, like the Irish Lithium and the Cabrina Switchblade, which have been going for 15-18 years already, which so it's not new versions, but yes, they've updated their materials. The industry requirements, or the customer requirements, have changed through the years, but it hasn't been major changes. The product's still the same market segment, and yeah, which is,
Yeah.
so that's pretty much it. So you prototype it. Once a manager says that's enough, then you
That's
then you
exactly
get
like a software development. Exactly like it.
then you get your pre-production samples, which is pretty much everything that you want, all of the details, the screen printing, the stitching, whatever you've specified. You get a pre-production sample, and that comes to you. You check it over, you fly it, you make sure it matches exactly what you want, and then you go, yes, factory, can you please start manufacturing this? And then, yeah, that's pretty much the whole process. And in the meantime, you've worked with the factory to make sure that they can stitch it exactly the way that you want it stitched. They can source all the materials that you want them to source, that they don't have their tolerances in production are right, that they stitching the kite the correct way. So you're not going to end up with half the kites flying left and half the kites flying right. They've all got to be exactly the same. So there's a lot of work with the suppliers, and that relationship is very, very important, because sometimes I've seen designers say, my design is perfect, you guys aren't manufacturing it properly. And then you go and you go, look, well, actually they can't get the sewing machine to stitch in that location because it's such a small detail that you've put there. So of course they're going to struggle with making that right every time. But unless you can talk to the supplier, they're not going to tell you, no, sorry, we can't do this. Or if you change this, it would make it easier for us. They'll just keep trying and wasting everybody's time. So that relationship's very important. But yeah, so sign off on the pre-production samples, and yes, hold thumbs that the public like it. On top of that, you've had to do the manuals, you've had to do the bags, you had to do all of the write all of the marketing information, so all of the technical information, so that the marketing team can take it and talk about the product to the media or to the public. So yeah, so that's also part of the product person's role. You can't go, well, I've made this amazing thing, you guys go sell it. You've got to now tell them, why is it amazing? What have I done that's different to last year? All of those things, you've got to be able to articulate that so that the marketing person can talk about it and share it with your customers. So yeah, and I'm sure it is no different in any other product realm, be it kites or shoes or software. It's all very similar. It just takes a little bit longer with kites than with software. You can't iterate as quickly with kites.
I mean, the big selling point now that you have is the proven metric that it allows you to jump higher and boost and woost and get on top of the woo board, basically. That's proven by several people, including yourself. One thing that I wanted to ask you, there's this book called Invisible Women. I don't know if you know it. It's basically about how women are fundamentally non-existing when it comes to the design of everyday things, of everyday world, basically. So one of the examples in the book is actually car manufacturers who don't ever use a female dummy. Some of the car manufacturers still sometimes use a scaled down crash dummy, which is basically a smaller version of a male dummy. And a lot of our anatomy doesn't actually allow for this type of design. Like some women have like breasts and their bodies are different. Our center of gravity is different from a male's center of gravity. Our arms are shorter, which is the biggest selling point for any female oriented kite design basically these days. How are you taking this aspect in your design? And you're obviously a woman, so you're designing for yourself as well. But like, how are you taking these things into consideration when you're designing a kite?
Generally, when I design a kite, the product brief, it's got to be for everyone. I always say to people, you've got to try a product before you buy it, because the designer and the test team may not have looked like you, and they may not have kited in the same location as you. They may have only tested it in tropical conditions where the wind's smooth and never over 25 knots, and they may not weigh more than 80 kilograms. So it's not just about product not being designed for women, because a lot of people have tried to design product for smaller people and for women specifically. But yes, in the early days, we used to joke it was always about shrinking and pinking it. It wasn't actually about building a product that was optimized for smaller feet, lighter weight, everything like that. I'm unfortunately not the typical female body shape, like a European shape. I am relatively short and I'm relatively square. So my I don't have the reach so I hop onto some other brands of kites and I feel overpowered all the time, just because of the way that the balance is between the sheeting pressure and the steering input pressure. I'm holding the kite in a position where when I want to go do a back roll, for example, naturally, because I'm trying to hold the bar in the right position, I end up turning the kite mid-rotation unintentionally. And it turns really quickly, and I end up looping the kite while I'm doing a back roll. But that's okay. I'm used to doing that. I can do it. I can do it on purpose on my kites. If it accidentally happens on someone else's kite, it's not an issue. But I can't imagine that that's confidence inspiring for anybody who's got my build and is using these products. Yet the marketing teams say that the product is for a beginner person or intermediate person or whatever it may be, but they don't say it's for a intermediate person who is over 5'8" tall and weighs 75 kilograms. So the aspect ratio is tall and skinny, because that's a lot of the people that ride in the test teams are relatively skinny and relatively tall. So they've got longer limbs, and they do have that reach, which we don't have. So my products tend to have a shorter depower travel. So you can go from being powered to depowered in just the throw of your arms, without too much bar pressure. The steering input pressure, so the you can feel when you're telling the kite to turn. So the balance, it's pretty well balanced between the sheeting and the steering, but I would say that the sheeting's a little bit lighter than the steering, so that you know when you're turning it. It doesn't turn slower. It just you can feel it when you turn it. And the other thing is, it doesn't pull from, like the products I design tend to not pull from the harness so much. So you don't feel like you're going to get pulled over onto your face all the time when a gust comes through or anything like that. It feels like you can resist that pressure. And it's a user interface thing. And yes, there is the same thing with women's harnesses. It's like there haven't really been products designed by women for women. And then you look at the model that the product's being tested on, and it tends to be a non-athletic model, and not actually a kite surfer, that it's being tested. It's like, we just need a girl, and this person's here, and we'll try it on them. And fortunately, no, I think it was this last season, the first harness designed by a woman for women was released by Ion, and that was Julia's design, and that's amazing. It's like, yes, it's someone heard, and there is a market for it, and yeah, so there is product being designed for women out there by women, but we are all different shapes and sizes. Be it that we're women or men. I mean, if you look at an Asian person versus a Northern European person versus an American, on average, you see three completely different body shape people, and yeah, and that's just one example of the diversity that we've got to design for. So some brands will be more popular in certain regions than others, and that's just the way it is. And I think the more diverse the product on offer is, and if it can stay that way for a long time, the more people will keep in the sport. So yeah, it's the issue is when every brand wants to design the same kite, that every kite looks exactly the same, because it was the one that was the most popular in the competition last year or whatever it is. Now everybody's designing exactly the same kite. It's like, yes, that works for that person, that specific competitor. It doesn't work for everybody. We need more options. So, yeah.
For sure. And I've been thinking about it actually, of what can brands do in order to make like not all of their kites, but most of their kites accessible to all the different body shapes and sizes and heights, and maybe people with different balances. And do you think that something can be done in terms of, for example, releasing manuals or releasing um, any videos that are brand specific, that come from the brand to tell you, if you're that type of person, this is how you should adjust your kite. This is how you should trim your bar. I've never trimmed my bar ever, and I get secondhand kites, and they're always from men, right? And I don't really think about it because I'm so used to reaching the bar really high, and I'm quite tall, actually, so
Mhm.
it's not really like bigger problem. But do you think that the brands should do better in terms of communication and education, and also possibly the kite instructors? Because most of the kite instructors, I would say, are men who are telling you how to trim or how to ride. But should they be communicated differently to women in terms of changing their kites?
I don't think it should be specific to women. I think it should be everybody should understand how their product works
Mm,
and what the changes do. So majority of the kite brands have the adjustments available on the rear line attachments where they can move them forward and back. And everyone goes, "Oh, I want the lightest and fastest steering pressure," but that's not what it's about. If you move the 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 attachment point, it can also change the depower travel. So how far the bar needs to move to depower your kite. Um, there also a lot of the brands have more than more than one knot attachment where you can make your rear lines longer or shorter, and that would apply for someone who's. I always used to, when I was with Airash, I always used to make my rear lines longer, um, to because I was holding the bar a lot closer to myself than the average rider because I am a shorter person. Um, whereas other people with longer limbs would actually put it on the top knot if there were 3 knots, versus the middle knot. And it's about everybody should give those different settings a go to see what works for them, because there's no hard and fast rule saying that if you 5'2", this is the setting for you, and if you're 5'9", this is the setting for you, because the limb ratios to where your harness sits, are you in a seat harness, all of these things change these settings. And the same with the boards. You've got the options for having a narrower stance and a wider stance. You can have your settings more ducked or straighter. And I think that all depends on your sporting background. And again, how long are your legs? Where's your center of gravity? All of those things will affect what's comfortable for you. And people go, well, your shoulder width is what you want it to be. It's like some people have really broad shoulders, but they're really short. So they end up standing way too wide on their boards, where they could be standing with a narrower stance. So it's not. I don't think there's anything specific. I think everybody can play with these things and talk to their friends about it and be at the beach and communicate and say, hey, I've tried this and I've found this happens. What have you found? And see what works for everybody. I don't think it's necessarily a brand thing or an instruction thing. I think it's a curiosity thing. And a lot of people are too scared to try different things because they only get a limited amount of kiting and they just go with what they know. Whereas I think if you spend a day trying a whole lot of stuff, you're going to find something that works better for you and you're going to have a much nicer season from there on. So yeah, that's my recommendation. I think more brands should be looking at trying to make product specific to their target audience and not trying to steal other brands' customers, because
Yeah.
that's what I see a lot of is people go, okay, well, this brand's growing because they've released this amazing product. We want to release exactly the same product so that we can take their customers and grow our brand. but it's what they should be going as well. Okay, no, that's an amazing product. Those customers now have a product. What product is needed for the people out there that don't have a product that works for them? And they should focus on designing that. And I think that's what brands should be focusing on.
Mm, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very good philosophy to have as well. Design for your customer, not for the customer you want to steal.
Grow the pie. That's I'm not about if this is the pie and you just want a bigger wedge of it, the industry is actually going to shrink because
Mm,
everybody's fighting with everybody. Whereas if you go, okay, well, this is the pie, who's outside of the pie who we can bring in and who we can turn into kiters. And that way, instead of growing your little wedge there, you're actually growing your whole slice outside of the pie. And it's a lot more potential customers than people who already kite, as the people who don't kite, the people who live in areas where there's wind, but it's not being utilized because there isn't a product that's good enough for it. Why not develop a product for that location?
I have actually, interestingly enough, a unisex harness from Ride Engine. Actually, very now quite an old one, but back in the days, I think it was the first. They were the first ones to design a hard shell harness. I think um,
There was
back like
they
5 or
bought
6 years
the
ago.
license for the hard shell harness off.
Mm.
Trying to remember who did the hard shell harness originally, but yeah, they were the first
Mm.
ones to release a first big brand to release a commercial hard shell harness.
Yeah. So I think it was one of the first ones that I do have actually still, and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
riding it. But again, until it comes apart, it's like that's what I have. But I can definitely feel it on the gusts, and I definitely feel it. It still rides up to my chin basically most of the time. So it's just the
Yeah.
thing that you sometimes live with, as you're used to the gear that's kind of like not made specifically for you.
But it's about finding product, and it's hard when a lot of especially with harnesses, I've noticed that they have because seat harnesses aren't popular. The only seat harness that gets made is a very generic one that doesn't fit anybody well.
Mm,
Whereas 25 years ago, when there was windsurfing seat harnesses, they were made, there were different cuts for different body shapes. So, like all the different brands had a different cut, and they may have had, like with the Kite, they had multiple cuts within their range. And then it's just over time, it's all become homogenized, and now seat harnesses aren't necessarily very comfortable or popular. However, there are people who are working on bringing back alternatives, and the same with the waist harnesses. Everybody went to hard shell. It was really hard to find a soft shell harness in waist harnesses, and because my waist is very very small. I've got ribs and I've got hips, and there's not much of a waist. Even though it goes in a lot, they're very close together because of my height. So a hard shell harness never fits me. It bumps into my bum and it bumps into my shoulder blades once it can go around my waist. Um, so I need a soft shell harness, and no brands are making them anymore. However, it seems that there are brands talking about bringing back those kind of harnesses. So
oh
yeah,
wow.
so it is finding a something that suits your body shape, and the same goes with wetsuits. If you're a tall and you've got longer limbs as a woman, you can find multiple brands of wetsuits that'll fit you. But as soon as you're short and square, you end up having to order the XXL and cut the legs, the legs and the torso, and restitch everything together again, just to make it fit, or get a custom wetsuit. So that because there aren't that many brands that cater specifically to shorter, wider women. Yeah. So that is
It's so interesting because for men, in terms of wetsuits, there is actually a tall version. So men actually get specifically tall version. In clothes, it is very common, right? So my mom, for example, we're
Mhm,
exactly the same height, but her legs are longer. So she needs to
mhm.
get tall or long versions of pants because otherwise they're too short.
Yeah,
And that's exactly the same problem as you're saying, because like for her, if she would get a wetsuit, she can't cut it up, but she can't also sew a wetsuit on top, you know? So all the wetsuits would be too short basically. So do you get
yeah.
like a men's one and remove extra space that you have like in the crotch area, you know? So like what's the trade-off, I guess?
I mean, that's pretty much what's been recommended through to me. I mean, to me for years. And however, I found that Reef, a South African brand, actually builds their wetsuit pattern is designed for more for shorter, wider people because that's how most South Africans are built. So I've actually now got a brand that suits my body shape and wetsuits. But before that, it was very much it was I'd people say, well, why don't you try the men's medium short or whatever it was? It was like that might be the right fit for you because the men had the the medium short, the medium tall, the like in all of the sizing. So whereas in women they had small, medium, large, extra large, and the options aren't many. And I think that's because I don't think the industry realizes how large the female market can potentially be if you provide the right product. Because the biggest, especially in wetsuits, a lot of women don't kite because they don't want to get cold. And so they'll kite in a tropical location, but they won't kite when they go back home. So they'll kite on holidays, but they won't kite at home. Um, one, because they feel uncomfortable in a wetsuit. And normally that is because it's not a flattering cut or it doesn't fit well or both. Um, and so if you can fix that problem, you possibly have more women kiting year round, which will then encourage more women to kite, which will then grow the female kiting population. So that's another touch point where we could increase the women market, female market. But yeah,
For sure. I
it
can
may
tell you,
happen.
like maybe some cultural tidbits are tied into it as well. That could be part of. Sometimes it's also part of the design process where you have a like a cultural perspective. In Eastern Europe, so I'm from Latvia originally, and in Eastern Europe, you are told not to get into the cold water or not to sit on the cold or anything because you can actually damage your ovaries and you're not going to be able to give birth.
Mhm.
So when you grow up, you actually have it in the back of your mind all the time. And even though I don't think it's really truth, whenever I have to stand in the cold water taking pictures of the guys, you know, like taking videos of
Mhm.
everybody in my crew, I'm very well aware of it. Like, and that's like the fear that I get in the back of my mind sometimes. I'm just like, oh, my ovaries are getting cold, you know, instead of just like, oh, I'm getting cold. It's like my fear is right away of it's like, oh, you know, it's like I'm gonna get sick down there basically if I'm in the water for too long.
Mhm.
And that's also part of it. I guess there could
Yeah.
be some other perception connected to that, I guess. Um,
I think so, and I think that is a struggle that a lot of women face is the fact that you growing up you get told certain things, whereas boys get told different things, and yeah, and that does hold a lot of girls and women back in the long run, and I hope that we can encourage more people to yeah speak to the children differently. And I do see it. A lot of kiters out there are super excited about getting their girls into the sport. So hopefully that means that there'll be more dads getting their girls into the sport, which then will increase the number of young girls in it. When they grow up, they'll get their daughters or they'll get their friends into it as they grow up. So, yeah, I think we've been around long enough. I mean, 20 years. It hopefully there's going to be, I mean, I've seen the growth in the number of women. Um,
for
it,
sure. Yeah.
it's been huge. It's been huge. Um, And I think when we started, there were probably less than 200 women kiting, and now there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So, yeah, it's
And the athletic development is stunning. Like the amount of tricks that the girls can do, the difficulty of the tricks that girls can do is just amazing. I guess if we can tie it all up and also get into that perception as well, like what do you think could be done in order to get more girls to work in the kite industry in terms of like kite design, or getting into the brands as well to work, like maybe get an office job in the in the kite thing. Maybe somebody likes it, to sit in the office. What can we do to actually support girls, but also what can be done to inspire girls to get into the kite industry?
I think there's so many. It's actually a struggle for both boys and girls to get into the kite industry. It's both sides really battle to get a foot in the door. And so the best thing to do is to start somewhere, be it start at a shop so that you can meet the brands. Then if you meet someone in the brand, then you can maybe do an internship. If you do an internship, then you've got a foot in the door and you know people. And it grows from there. So then once you know somebody in the brands, they will be able to say, hey, there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there, and they can introduce you to people who are looking for someone to do the work. But at the end of the day, you've got to decide what you want to do in the industry. It's like, do you want to be in customer service? Do you want to be in sales? Do you want to be in marketing? Do you want to be a graphic designer? And there are women in all of those roles. And the product design role, there are women in that role that we just don't see them, because with a lot of the big brands, they don't celebrate their designers because that's less important than the product. So you don't actually know who designed the product. You just know the product exists. But it is a small, women tend to come into the industry and then leave. They either become mothers or they get better opportunities in other industries, or there's no room to grow because once a senior designer, like with me, once with Erush, there was no opportunity to grow within a product role with the company. Well, in a timely fashion. Eventually, I mean, if I stayed there another 5 to 10 years, maybe I would have got a senior product role. But I wanted to be a kite designer now. So, yeah, at the end of the day, you've got to, one, take the opportunity to start anywhere within an industry, and two, if you want to be a product designer, just start designing product and making product. It doesn't matter what product it is. A harness, you can design a harness of your own. You can either get a sewing machine and sew it up yourself, or you can go to a cobbler or someone else to sew it up. You can get materials locally in most places around the world, big cities or coastal towns. There's product. And if you've got an idea, build a prototype, test it, and who knows, you might be the next person inventing a new design and then taking it to one of the big brands and saying, hey, I've done this, you can buy my design for this much. And like a lot of the product designers in our industry are actually freelance designers. They design product and then they take it to the brands. And then they end up getting contracts to continue designing similar products or whatever it may be. So you've just got to start somewhere.
Yeah, like build a network and hustle, basically.
And start building your skills. I mean, it's like, how do you become a coder? You've got to start coding. Just code. And once you can code and you can prove your skills, then you might get employed. You're not going to get employed and then learn to code. So the same thing applies to product design. Start designing product, and then you may be noticed, and then you may get a job if you want one. Yeah. So that's it. Give it a go. And if you want to learn to become a kite designer, or if you want to give it a go, KauroraCAD.online is an online version, and KauroraCAD.com has got the information on the Rhino plugin of the software that I use, and there's YouTube videos so you can watch how products have been designed, wings and kites, and give it a go.
YouTube is the university for people, really. You can learn
100%.
everything on YouTube.
I'm currently learning to tile on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Sue. This was, I mean, I can talk to you for hours and hours and hours, I think, on this topic and all other kite topics related. So hopefully this is not our last conversation. I hope I can find another angle of getting you on the call again and having a conversation about design of all things and kite related. So it's been so delightful. Best conversation.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm excited to continue listening to your podcast for years to come. And I've got a couple of names I've got to definitely put forward to you of people I'd love for you to get onto your podcast.
And that was the episode. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It was a long one, but it was really hard to actually cut anything out of it because I think Sue has an incredible insight into the kite industry. And she has a lot of really cool knowledge to share. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Give this episode a thumbs up wherever you're watching it or listening to it. And see you in the next one. See ya.